everybody, it's Kamal Fernandez from Kamal Fernandez Dog Training with another one of my interviews for my series called Lifting All Ships. Those of you that are listening on a podcast, you can check me out at Kamal Fernandez Dog Training on SoundCloud and listen to the interviews that I've done with the person that I have in front of me and other parties involved. But those of you watching, hopefully you can enjoy this interview with my very good friend, Dan Shaw, who I've known since he was a knee-high to a grasshopper, and he is a world championship level competitor, an international seminar presenter, and an all-around nice guy. One of my favorite people to talk to, and we always have a good laugh and banter between us. He's somebody that I'm very privileged to call a friend. How are you doing, good sir?
Oh, always so lovely, Kamal. I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. I just to give people a heads up. So this is actually the second interview that I've done with Dan, and it is partly because I just like talking to Dan, but because the original interview that we did was to let people know about an upcoming project, which Dan's going to tell us about a little bit shortly, which is called Agility Geek, named after his fantastic agility champion and dual cross champion, Combine Away Redefined, pet name Geek, hence the name. Dan was going to launch a puppy project. Unfortunately, the litter that he had his heart set on didn't quite come to fruition, which is very, very unfortunate. So and when we did our previous interview, we referenced that. So we thought the best thing to do is to do the interview and also talk about how that, amongst many things, have happened this year, which has been a real curveball. So first and foremost, obviously, I'm really, really sorry that didn't work out for you. How are you doing? How are you, getting yourself back on track about things, etc.?
It was a real gutting bit of news, really. We won't go into too much detail, but nature took its course. Obviously, it wasn't meant to be. And I moped for a couple of days because I was so excited. It was all so close to happening. And it had kind of been a litter that I'd helped plan. So I was really, really excited. But I moped for a few days and then decided, right, time to get over it, start making some new plans. And that's what I've done.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, you're generally a very, very positive, upbeat person. You're always full of fun and what have you. How have you as an individual coped with, for example, that instance and in general? Because this year has been a series of ups and downs, a real roller coaster of emotion. How as an individual, have you been dealing with it then considering how you are normally?
I think not just this instance, but my other dogs have tried to test me a little bit this year. Most of them have tried to have some sort of weird illness just to cause me stress. But yeah, I like to hope that I deal with those moments well. I think everyone's allowed their days to mope and cry and do whatever it is they want to do. But I'm fortunate enough that I'm surrounded by genuinely brilliant people, both in and out of the dog world. My dog friends and obviously Dave as well are super supporting, they're understanding, but I'm lucky to have that outside of the dog world as well, people that might not necessarily understand what the dogs mean to me, but then we've got dogs mean, but they understand what they mean to me, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I try just to surround myself with all of these people, and in their own ways they help build you back up, formulate a plan, and to be honest, I think once you've got a plan, I'm always fine.
Yeah, excellent. So how have you guys been coping in general with lockdown? Obviously you've got your great house now and great facilities, but from there's been a lot of changes. Obviously agility shows have been hardly any. I think there's been about 2 shows this year, 2 or 3.
I think we've had 2 shows. The shows are probably the most frustrating thing because we have boffin and commotion that we're so desperate to get up the grades and kind of do the things that we want them to do, win tickets, get to crafts, get on the world team, whatever it is they'll be capable of doing. So the shows are the frustrating thing for sure. Work-wise, we've been really lucky. We've been able to do one-to-ones throughout most of this lockdown. So that's kept us busy. And actually, normally I don't get much time for one-to-ones. So it's really been nice to spend some real quality time with my really regular students, and in one-to-one you get more time to nitpick and fix things that maybe we've left unattended for a little while. So yeah, they've kept me busy, and back to your roots really doing one-to-one, so it's quite nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you had a really strong pet domestic background when you first started. So let's take a little. We talked about this in the original interview. Your time, your journey, or your time scale from when you first started, and when obviously Dan and I first met via a friend that is no longer with us. But Dan lived in the same village where a very good friend of mine lived, and myself and some others, we used to meet up and train with this particular person, my good friend Kay Raven, and we would see Dan with his over friendly golden retriever sauntering up, normally in the middle of us trying to train dogs, and Dan being your atypical pet person. Oh, she's friendly, she only wants to say hello. And I had a dog at the time that wasn't so friendly, so it was always an interesting combination. But so how did it all start for you then, Dan?
So I think I was 9 when my parents finally gave in. I'd been begging for a dog, as all of us do that are addicted to dogs from birth. And I was given Hattie, 8-week-old golden retriever. And it became just my life. Everyone else was on their Game Boys and consoles, whatever they were called. I don't even know what they're called. And I was out there walking Hattie for hours, bless her. She'd normally be like, please, not. And I was really fortunate that the Chipperfield Common was like the home of Kay Raven's training and Lynn's training, and you guys were often up there. And I would just sit and watch and be like, wow, this is incredible what these dogs can do. And obviously I would watch Crufts every year, and I would watch Mary Ray, probably more so than Agility at the time, and be like, wow, these dogs are incredible. But I wasn't a gifted dancer, so I couldn't follow.
I beg to differ. I've seen you with a couple of shandies, Dan. You can shimmy it with the best of them.
So yeah, I got addicted to dog training. My mum's really good friend turned out to be an obedience judge and competitor, and was ahead of her times. Took me under her wing a little bit. 21 years ago, 20 years ago that I got Hattie, and everything was treat based. So she was really ahead of her time. And Hattie could do really cool things. Like she could do send away. Her heel work, don't get me wrong, you'd be mortified by it, but I was blown away by it. She could do really cool tricks, way more than your average pet dog. And I was just hooked on it, teaching her new things. So yeah, that was my first dog.
So how did you go from that into Agility then?
So I found myself volunteering at a local puppy class. And the lady that ran that, Leslie Young, she ended up moving to America. So I think I was 17 or 18 when I took over these weekly puppy groups in the village hall, and they were always super busy. And I ran those for 10 years. So probably throughout those 10 years trained hundreds and hundreds of dogs, hundreds of different breeds. And most of those dogs needed something to go on to. They'd get to your third group, they could do every trick under the sun. They were bored of you adding another 10 seconds onto their stay. They were at 25 minutes. So they needed somewhere to go. And Agility was a sideline of this club, probably the biggest part of the club, actually. So I decided to go along there with Hattie and try it out, see if I could help, and was hooked. So then you need another dog. So then along came Cody, first border collie.
And he was a really kind dog to you, wasn't he? In the sense that he had an amazing temperament. He was really easygoing, and he had enough about him, but not being, a headbanger where he was obsessive or anything like that. He was just a really honest dog, wasn't he? Well, is an honest dog.
Yeah, he's one of those dogs that if you could clone them and give them to all of your students, you would, because they'd have the easiest time of their life. He had nothing, like absolutely faultless temperament. You could take him, still does. His faultless temperament, you can take him anywhere. And I was saying yesterday, I actually think, except for Boffin, who's on a different level, I think he's probably the most driven dog I've had. And I did nothing to create that. He just was. He went on to win gold medal at the WAO. You were there for some of my training sessions with him. You know that wasn't me.
Yeah, well, I can remember. We won't discuss your dog walk training in the early days, Dan, or your tunnel training, but never mind. We'll glance over that one. You definitely wouldn't do an online course on that method.
No, we won't be using the falling off the dog walk.
Yeah. So you went from, obviously you had, I mean, that's amazing. Your first real agility dog, and he went to win gold medal at the WAO. That's incredible. And then you got someone that was a little bit more challenging, which pushed you as a dog trainer, because I think a lot of us in your position, certainly when you have dogs, when you don't know a lot, to be truthful, and you have dogs that are forgiving and don't have a lot of the issues that a lot of dogs do, you tend to believe your own propaganda and think it was you that made them what they were. It's only a little bit of age and wisdom and experience that you realize, actually, I was bloody lucky to get that type of dog. So along comes little Madam Ditto, who was somewhat of a shell shock to you in the system, was she not?
Oh my word, I couldn't quite believe what had entered the house. Yeah, like you said, the two dogs before her couldn't have been any easier. And then in walks Ditto, who hated other dogs, hated other people, didn't really like toys, had absolutely no need for me. And no one really likes to admit it, but she was just very, very hard to bond with when she was a young dog.
That must have been really, really frustrating. I mean, obviously, I knew you at that point, and it was frustrating of that whole. And she was the dog that she sort of pushed you to the end of your tether several times over, didn't she? Really, where it was frustration of knowing, because she's a really smart, intelligent dog, isn't she? She just had these quirks and a long list of them.
She's the smartest dog I've had. So to train tricks to, she's incredibly easy. And she was the dog that when I got her, I decided I was going to do absolutely everything positively with. And you know what I've been like with all of my dogs. I'm very soft on my dogs. Everything is reward based. But with Ditto, I decided there was going to be no negatives at all. So it was really the worst thing I could have done with her, because I didn't understand the concept of the positive training enough. My idea was if I didn't reward it, she wouldn't do it again. But actually, running at a dog, barking and herding it with all your hackles up was so self-rewarding for her that not rewarding it didn't matter at all. She was having the time of her life.
Yeah. And so you obviously, that was a steep learning curve for you to have with that particular dog, and you know, it clearly worked out because she won a ticket in agility. She's a grade 7 dog. I mean, that's amazing, isn't it? You know, to go from that humble beginning or that struggle, and that's a great thing to for other people to hear, that somebody as successful as yourself has had dogs. I think that's the misconception, that people that are successful and the elite level of any sport don't have struggles. And I think that's something to assure people that, you know, there is moments when our dogs are going to frustrate us, you know, cause us to be down in tears, and you think you're never going to get it, and you have to sort of rethink and go. And that's where, again, you talked about earlier about having a really supportive group of peers and people that you train with that can help you in that moment. And obviously, you know, your partner Dave, he's incredibly experienced, and I'm sure he was a support. But then you also have a really good close network of friends that would support you through that as well. And I think that's something to take away. I think you need to surround yourself by the right people when you have challenges like that, really.
Yeah, 100%. Ditto is so good to reference on training days as well, because when people think they're struggling, you tell them some Ditto stories and they think, oh, mine's not that bad. And it gives them a little bit of motivation, but also for other dog trainers, because I personally feel like I wouldn't know 80% of the things I know if I hadn't persevered with Ditto. It would have been really easy to have quit and gone, this is too hard, this isn't going to get me to the places that I want to go to. But actually, by sticking with her, the bond I have with her is incredible. Like, it's just as strong as it is with any of my other dogs, if not stronger, because we had to battle through so many things and get to know each other on so many different levels. I actually wouldn't change any of it. I would do it all again.
Really? Wow, that's interesting. That, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because I think that's the thing to assure people, that sometimes you don't instantly have that instant affinity with a dog. And I've had dogs that I've got, and I thought, oh gosh, this is not quite what I signed up for whatever reason. It doesn't really matter. And you have to work at your relationship with the dog. It doesn't always come instantaneously with every single dog. No. In contrast, you get some dogs that you absolutely click with, which is a great example in Geek and you, who literally the second that dog was on this planet, you just had that connection with, didn't you? Really? Or the second you saw him. But that is such a rarity to have that instantaneous bond. But you most definitely have it with him, and he's obviously, the success he's had has been incredible. I mean, you even, I suspect you could imagine what an incredible dog he's turned into. Or did you secretly have ambitions that he would one day do the things that he has?
We were talking about this the other day. I genuinely knew he was special from the beginning, but Ditto had took me to a place where I was a bit like, I don't think I'm ever going to do particularly well in dog sports. I think I'll just do it for fun and whatever. as he started to get better and better, I was like, okay, my aim is to make him an agility champion. I want 3 tickets with him, and that's, I'll be more than happy. So when he achieved that, I remember being like, oh, now what?
Yeah.
So then I started to aim for the world teams and crafts, etc., etc., etc. So then he went on to kind of do 1,000 times more than I ever thought either of us could ever do.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that brings us nicely on to your current dog, which, or your current youngster, which is Boffin, and that's Geek's daughter. And how are you finding her in comparison to her dad? Has it been, have you had challenges with forming that relationship with this, you know, the progeny of your once in a lifetime dog? Because that's something that a lot of people experience. Have you got any words or thoughts of, or pearls of wisdom on that relationship?
So I would say that getting a puppy from your special dog isn't for everybody. And I was fully aware of that, and I'd spoken with everyone about it. I'd spoken with you about it, and a lot of people said, "Are you sure you want to do this? Geek does no wrong, in my eyes, anyway.
Yeah.
Are you sure you want to have your next dog as a puppy from him?" But I really did. The only thing that I was quite cautious of is in the litter is I picked the puppy that I felt was the least like him. There was 3 puppies that were really just Geek clones, and I didn't go for them because I know that with those I'd be really tempted to compare them. So I went with Boffin, who was the complete opposite. She's 99% her mum. So yeah, and it's a completely different relationship. She's nothing like him, but again, I adore her just as much. I have just as much fun training her. Possibly I wouldn't let Geek know now, but when I go to the back of the van and pick which dog to train, sometimes I pick her first.
Yeah.
So yeah, she lives to train. So she's so much fun to do things like that with.
Yeah, she's a real wild child, isn't she? And that, do you think that she's, what would you look for then in an agility dog now? Then say, for example, obviously Cody, your and Ditto versus Geek, your opinion, mindset, what you look for has probably changed. And what is the biggest evolution that you've had then in terms of what you look for in a dog now?
I think I've learned what I'm good and what I'm not good at in creating in a dog. I would say my skill is building dogs up, making them motivated, making them feel like they're really important, confident, etc., etc. So then when you're given a dog that's already wild and already thinks it's quite special, I have to change my character. So I'd say when I train Geek, I'm very much naturally me. I'm quite wild and I can build him up and tell him how amazing he is.
Yeah.
With Boffin, I have to make a real conscious effort to be calm, and to, you know, just kind of take a little bit of time with things and not get so excited myself. Which is also really fun because it means you can be, I'm not so exhausted at the end of a training session. But I would say I probably suit, in terms of my natural character, the dogs that I have to build up a little bit more. So for the next puppy, I aim to go in and pick the middle of the road puppy. We'll play with the toy, but he's not pulling your arm off for it. And he'll have some, or she will have some energy, but she's not the one doing loops of the pen when everyone else is asleep. That was Boffin. And they're really, really fun. But I also think you have to be careful of how many of those you have within one group. Like the thought of having more than one of her is scary.
Yeah, that's a really, really fair point. I think, and I think it as a trainer, it gives you versatility. You know, I mean, I've had so many different dogs, different breeds, different shapes, and I think it makes you a better dog trainer to be able to adapt to the dog. And to me, the goal is to get the best out of the dog. It's not necessarily, you know, not every dog is going to be an agility champion or a world champion, etc. You hope that they can do the best that they possibly can, but it's measuring your expectations against the dog's capability. And my goal is to get the best out of the dog versus you know, writing it off because it doesn't meet the criteria that I have, or the you know, the agenda should always be to get the dog first and foremost that you like and love, and then go from there. And I mean, everybody hopes to have, you know, that the dog does great things, but that you have to balance it out. You know, you could have a dog that has an injury, that some gets ill, and you know, your ambitions go by, and you have to have a little bit of perspective, and first and foremost, you know, really connect with the dog and work on your relationship, which is, I think, what you really, really excel at. So in terms of your, obviously you mentioned about getting your young dogs up the grades. That's taken a little bit of a sidestep, and obviously the World Championships have gone by this year. How are you keeping yourself motivated? How have you kept yourself focused, or have you just gone, do you know what, I'm going to go with the flow and pick up the reins next year? What's been your perspective on the year?
So it's actually made me realise, because a lot of people that I've spoken to, they've said without the competitions, they've not got the drive to train. But I wouldn't say it's massively affected mine, because I do genuinely just love training them. So I wouldn't say it's affected the frequency of their training, or the effort that I put in. It's just that the training is possibly a bit less structured. So for example, if I know that I've got World Champ qualifiers coming up, then I'll be training just courses by that specific judge. So it's been a little bit less maybe specific than normal. But I've got dogs that love to train and love to learn, so I'm out there training them just as regularly. So yeah, it hasn't really affected my motivation.
Yeah, and what have you been specifically working on with your, like, say for example, Geek versus Botfin? They're both at very different stages of their career. You know, Geek is the the comfy slippers. He knows his job. What have you been doing with him versus what have you done with Botfin?
So I've been aiming with both of them to do one course a week that I set up from somebody else, a different judge, so that they're running under a different style, because they were getting to the point on my courses, and I feel like they're quite hard courses, but they are my style, where they could do them quite easily because the themes that come through are quite similar. So I've been trying to set up courses by different, and it's incredible how different that makes the dogs. And then probably that's all Geek's been doing of most weeks is that one course running session. And then with Boffin, she's also been fine-tuning skills. So dog walk, loose turns, they needed some loving. Weave exits, they needed some loving. And her backside jump style needed some work. So throughout those three projects, they've kept me busy, really.
Yeah, excellent. It's good that you've actually taken the time. And I think that, you know, sometimes this, people, depending on your personality, I think would affect how you've dealt with this COVID and the restrictions it's put in place. And I think my mantra or my attitude has been, you know, use this opportunity to work on those things with your young dogs, or your dogs that you would normally put off because you have a show, you don't want to cause an issue, there's a problem evolving, and yet you want to compete, or you want to try and, you know, get qualifying events, etc., etc. Now would be the time to really strip those back. And the likelihood, even if, you know, the restrictions change and we're allowed to go back to normality, hopefully in the new year, we're still going to have a considerable amount of time. You're talking several months before shows are going to be in full swing, and we don't know how the format's going to be. I would urge everybody to look at their foundations. I'm a stickler for basics and working on your foundation and digging up any of the rot that you've allowed to set in, which even with seasoned dogs, even with established dogs, it's a really good thing to go back to basics and polish it out, you know, take off all the rust that you've let, you know, dog shows and competing will inevitably let little things creep in, because you have the conflict between your competitive persona and your dog training persona, and the two things are in constant conflict with each other. Your competitor says, go for the win, and the dog trainer says, make sure it meets criteria, and the two things are in opposition with each other. And it's really important that you take this time to allow your dog training voice to take precedence and to work on those details. But Dan gave a really great tip there to ensure that certainly with your more established dogs, you are periodically running courses or doing rounds or doing the test as required, because what will happen in contrast is the dogs will turn up, or you will turn up at a dog show next year, and you'll realize how rusty that you are in your handling, and how whether it's physically fit, mentally fit, how abnormal it will feel to actually complete a whole test. And that requires a level of concentration and focus. I think visualization is a great thing to do to get yourself in that persona. Visualize yourself at a major event or competing, and get a bit anxious, you know, even if, like Dan mentioned, running somebody else's course if you're an agility handler, or getting somebody else to call you around if you're doing obedience, etc. And put yourself under that, a little bit out of that comfort zone, so that you are developing the ability to focus under a level of pressure. The great insight there, Dan. So the original reason we were having a conversation is you were launching your new online project, which is called
Agility Geek.
Agility Geek, as he's for the podcast, he's holding up his jumper with his logo, very snazzy logo.
Yeah, very nice, Geek's face.
Excellent. And just tell us a little bit about what that is, and obviously when it's going to be launched now.
So Agility Geek is going to be a website purely based for agility puppies, possibly sporting puppies, and young dogs. So from 8 weeks old through to the time that I put them on the start line. The original thought of the website was that it was going to be just a follow along diaries, like we did with Boffin, but just more structured and set up through a website. But I've actually now changed how the website's going to look. So you're going to go into the website, you sign up, and there's going to be different boxes you can click. Like you could click 8 weeks to 10 weeks or 10 weeks to 12 weeks or whatever age you want to pick. Because I feel like so many people have a puppy and they end up doing the same exercise over and over again because they've run out of ideas of what to do when they're going to feed the dog its meal or whatever. Yep. So you could go on, click on that age, and then there'll be hundreds, I imagine, of videos of things you could do with your puppies. But rather than just watching them live, they are going to have voiceovers from me and like text on the side. So they'll be more of a learning tool than just to watch what I do with my puppy. There's also a spaniel included in the video. So my regular student Jane follows her puppy again from 8 weeks through to going on to its first start line in her weekly one-to-ones. So already I've got, I think, 6 videos from the weekly one-to-ones of this puppy, and you see the progress of a different breed, because I think a lot of trainers have the same breed. Cockers are super popular, so I wanted access to another breed for people to follow as well.
Yeah, excellent. It sounds really, really exciting. Obviously, the start date's been put off until Dan gets his puppy, which hopefully will not be a million years away, because obviously he has a lot to bring to the table, and I'm sure people are going to be really, really super interested in that project. So how can people reach out to you? Obviously, you're on Facebook, you're now on Instagram.
Yeah, I want more likes on Instagram, please, people. So if you don't mind following me, that'd be lovely.
So go to follow Dan. So it's Agility Geek on Instagram. You can check him out. He'll be posting cool pictures of his dogs, etc. And obviously regularly be having content on there. And he'll be also letting you know when he's going to launch his site. So in terms of your upcoming plans, what obviously now would be a classic big final you'd be probably prepping for would be Olympia. It's going to be surreal without Olympia, isn't it?
Yeah, Olympia was the real one that frustrated me, because it's the big final that Geek's not won, and I feel like he's going to be 8 next week, the week after. That felt like it was really going to be his last chance. But that's fine. I've told Boffin she has to win it the following year. So we're over it. The dogs will have a little bit of a break now as well. Olympia really does get in the way of the dogs having a break when you'd really want, because we have the season starting with Crufts in March, all the way through to Olympia. They do need a bit of a break, so the dogs will have a nice few weeks off over Christmas.
Excellent. And hopefully you're going to have what have you got plans for? What, obviously it's all a bit up in the air. Have you got plans for Christmas and what you're going to be doing?
Yeah, I think we're just going to see really close family. I think we're allowed to see 3 households, aren't we? So my mum and my nan.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully this interview we'll get this interview out on both a video format on YouTube and on a podcast. It's been as always, it's super fun talking to you, Dan. You know, he's one of the people that is just so easy. I may not talk to Dan for ages. I pick up or message him, and it's like I've seen him literally 5 minutes ago. I wish you nothing but the best in everything that you do. I'm sure Agility Geek is going to be super, super successful. And I look forward to seeing you in person at some point.
Thank you, Kamal. Lovely to chat with you.
Take care, Dan. See you soon.
Bye.